Originally, I was planning on doing Outbound Flight, but due to my copy having water damage, my original, I had to get a new one. So, next time, I'll review it. This time, I'm going to review the second book of the Legacy of the Force series, Bloodlines, by Karen Traviss. I never read a Karen Traviss novel before. This is my first one. I know some people in this fandom have, some people love her work. Some people absolutely despise her work. And I don't understand why. I mean, I felt this book was pretty good, but then I haven't read the Republic Commando series. But I'll talk about some things about the book, the good and the bad, like I always do. The second book takes place a few months after the first. Things are getting worse for the Galactic Alliance, and this is where Jason takes another step to the dark side. He basically becomes part of the secret police of. They're not called the secret police, but that it's the equivalent of the Galactic Alliance. Then Skywalker joins him, in there, and there's an increasing conflict between the Solos and the Skywalker family. The schism between them is getting stronger in this book. And, of course, there's another plot line, which I'm going to talk about later because I got things I got to talk about. And there's problems with Clonaria, with the leader, with Tarkin Sal Solo, which is the cousin of Han Solo, who's given him grief over the years. This book essentially, think of it like Game of Thrones, where there's multiple storylines going on. There's Jason and Ben's part of the story. There's Luke and Mora. There's Han and Leia, and Boba Fett. They're all intertwined, and they all come together. It's not like there's a separate story, but. What do they think of it? Well, the pacing is really good. It doesn't feel slow. Karen Traviss, for someone who's never read her work before, I think she's a competent writer. She writes really good. The scenes, there's some graphic scenes in here, which I was shocked that because I haven't read anything this violent since Darth Maul Lockdown. The thing I really do like about this book is I feel like, if you're someone who is a fan of Jason, like I am, it's becoming difficult to root for him. Even though I understand his motivations, but I don't know if I could fully support him at this point because he does some questionable things. And Lamaya, her role in this is, she's a lot like Palpatine. I'm not going to lie, the parallels between the Legacy of the Force series and the prequels is astounding. No, they're not retelling the same story. It's just, some of the events are happening just in a different way. Of course, Jason, he has an ability, which it's mentioned in this book, where he can time flow, where he could go to a certain point in time and witness certain events. Jason at this point is obsessed with Darth Vader, trying to not repeat his mistakes. And this is, again, at this point, Revenge of the Sith, was shown in theaters, and EU writers had a lot of room to actually mention events in the prequels. And this is where I'm going to talk about Boba Fett's portion. Even though I'm not a big fan of Boba Fett, I never liked him, honestly. I felt he was just a cooler-looking stormtrooper. At least that's how I've always thought of him. I prefer Jango Fett, and when I found out that he's a clone, it made me give me another reason not to like him. His part of the story deals with him dying and trying to find his daughter that he hasn't seen since she was 2. And this thing, another I do like about this, Karen Traviss, connects this with various other stories like Knights of the Old Republic, the season comics. And the short story with Boba Fett, all of it's connected, which I'm surprised. The continuity in here with the rest of the expanded universe was amazing. And it does give you some more insight on Boba Fett as a character. And a certain character, I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't read the series, has her own reasons for traveling with Boba Fett. I think his story is interesting, though I will get to my verdict, what I think of it. I think not a single story of this are boring. I think they're all interesting, seeing what every character is doing. And I felt like it was a perfect balance between, Jason Solo and all the rest of the characters. And it's really hard to see the relationships with these characters breaking. Because Jason's relationship with his parents at this point is completely fallen apart. And his relationship with his uncle Luke is pretty much done. And I don't want to knock the prequels or anything, because I am a fan of them, but I feel like this story is betterly told than Anakin's fall to the dark side. Because, you have various books that came before this, like 30 books, and to see Jason's fall, it isn't out of nowhere either. I mean, this person's been through a lot. And his slow descent to the dark side, I do find it believable. And I find it interesting. He's someone that thinks he's doing the right thing, but he really isn't. And I find Jason to be a more compelling villain. He's not a villain at this point, but he's getting to there, than Darth Vader, in my opinion. If you haven't read the first book, I wouldn't recommend reading this, but I'm not going to say I recommend you to read this, because if you've read the first one, you're going to want to read it anyway. I would pretty much give this the same rating I gave the first one, though there are some things I do have to talk about. As much as I like Boba Fett, at least what I've seen of him in this book, I do feel like his story wasn't necessary. I do feel like it takes away from Jason's story, because the legacy of the 4 series, at least at this point, is about Jason's fall to the dark side. And adding unnecessary characters in the mix takes away from that. I know Karen Traviss has a thing where she focuses a lot on the Mandalorians when she has them in her stories. I feel like Boba Fett doesn't really belong in this kind of story. And I think it takes away from Jason's story, in my opinion. Not that it's bad, it's just I feel like I would have rather her write a separate story from this. And because she had to tie in her own storyline with the main one with Han Solo, which it wasn't needed, in my opinion. Not as good as the first book, in my opinion, of the series, but I still enjoyed it nevertheless, though I think I could have gone without the Mandalorian's inclusion. Because, and the other books, they're going to be included, and they're going to take away from the main storyline. The ending is something I do have an issue with. I didn't like the fact that she ended this book with Boba Fett and his granddaughter, spoilers, rather than end this book with Jason and Lamaya. Because this isn't Boba Fett's story. This is Jason Solo's story. And I feel like the final chapter of the book, the editorial should have switched that around. Because Boba Fett does not, he does not need to be in this story. Karen Traviss didn't need to put him in there. And I'm sorry for those who like her writing and for those Boba Fett fanboys. This is Jason's story. This isn't Boba Fett's story. This is Jason's story. And now, in the various other books in the series, other, they can't simply be taken out at this point. I haven't read all of this series, but I feel like I do not like the fact that Boba Fett was inserted here when this is the story of Jason's fall to the dark side in the Second Galactic Civil War. That's just my opinion. I give this a good rating, but I seriously did not like Boba Fett's inclusion in the series. We could have gone without him. That's just my humble opinion. May the Force be with you, and next time we talk about Star Wars, it's going to be Outbound Flight in the novels. Next episode, I'm going to talk about the last story in this omnibus. Have a good day, everyone, and may the Force be with you.